Welcome to For the Health of It, Because You Can, where host Susan Robinson dives into the 8 categories of wellness with experts from various fields. We offer tips and information to help you thrive in all areas of individual wellness.
So, Hannah, I've attended a class at the store, at the natural grocery store. It was a coffee hack, how to make healthy coffee. So, can you tell me a little more about the classes that you offer, or how do you find out about the other classes? I just happened to stumble onto that one.
Yeah. So we teach classes about twice a month at all of our stores. Every single Natural Grocers has a credentialed health coach on staff. And so those topics can range quite a bit in what we're presenting. We usually have a little bit of food to sample. We might be talking about brain health, stress, something more specific like turmeric or collagen. But if you're ever interested in finding what classes are being offered at each store, you can go to our website, www.naturalgrocers.com. And at the very top, there's a tab that says events. And so you can just use that to search by state and then by store. You can search for cooking demos. You can search for just nutrition classes, but that would be the best way. Besides, you can always call the store and ask as well. They can get you in touch with the health coach, and they'd be happy to tell you about that too.
Okay, so you're saying health coach. What exactly does that entail?
So yes, my specific background educationally, I have a bachelor's in dietetics and exercise. Each of our health coaches have different backgrounds, but that's mine. And I do a variety of things at the store. All my services are free, which I love, but I do the classes. They're free to attend. I also do one-on-one coaching. So that's a sit-down situation. I do a little eval, do some education, help you determine what your goals are and how you'd like to get there, and offer you that support. I can also help you shop, read labels, shop for a specific diet, whether that's, blood sugar friendly, low sodium, whatever you're curious about, gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, paleo, just curious about supplements, body care. It can be whatever you're looking for.
That offers quite a bit, actually.
Yeah,
at
I
a
love
store,
it.
most than I've ever seen in any other health food store.
Yeah.
So I've been reading a lot about clean food versus ultra-processed food.
Yeah.
Can you address that? Do you mind telling me a little more about what do you mean by clean?
Yeah.
And then what do you mean by ultra-processed?
Yeah. So, generally, when I'm thinking of a clean food, I'm thinking of something that is as close to nature as possible, right? So the least amount of ingredients, if it does come out of a box or a bag or a can, the least amount of ingredients, the least amount of changes made to that food from the time it came out of the ground, but then ideally sticking to fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, dairy, meats. Of course, there's individualistic preferences and needs within that, but you want to avoid food that has been drastically altered from its original form. And there's so many reasons for that. They've lost nutrition. They have had things added to them that are less desirable, preservatives, artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, whatever it might be. They a lot of times will throw off our entire palate. It's hard to enjoy real food when you're constantly consuming that highly palatable processed food. It's generally maybe harder on your blood sugar. It may not have as good of fats. A lot of times may not be as balanced with adequate protein. So, there's no bad foods. It's kind of a slippery slope when you don't want to demonize any kind of food that's providing your body with calories and nourishment, right? That across the board is something to be grateful for. But in general, we want to focus on vibrantly colored fruits and veggies, the things that grow out of the ground, legumes, whole grains, in their natural form as much as possible.
Right. I actually read an article recently from Harvard Health Beat that actually was addressing whether or not these ultra-processed foods are creating a flavor addiction.
Yes, absolutely. It's wild. I always think of the meme where it's like showing a picture of a Cool Ranch Dorito and it's like, one of these bad boys would have killed a 17th century peasant one bite, and it's funny to think about that. Like there is so much flavor, on that one little bite of chip compared to the foods that humans have been eating for the vast majority of our existence.
Yeah, totally get that. Now I want to address sugar.
Yeah.
And again, I get articles sent to me all the time. Mm-hmm. And this one was talking about especially the high fructose corn syrup and sugar in foods. And what does that actually do to the body? I mean, I've read where it was the number one inflammatory causing food was sugar.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? I mean, why are people so addicted to it, it seems like, and they can't stop?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are good evolutionary reasons that we are driven to seek foods that are high in sugar. I mean, it hasn't necessarily been something that we had access to, but on a very basic level, having adequate blood sugar is what keeps us alive, right? And so when you learn about that evolutionary biology aspect, which I won't get super deep into, there are reasons for why sugar is so palatable to us and why we crave it when we have it and why we seek it out, other than the fact that it just has addictive qualities. I mean, the same parts of the brain can be affected as other addictive substances. And so there's all of that tied into it. But the amount of sugar that we're getting is enormous. And so it impacts us in a variety of ways, right? So it can affect our gut microbiome in ways that make us crave sugar. It throws off our blood sugar. And when your blood sugar is up and down all the time, that's going to make you crave sugar. It is definitely an addictive thing. I mean, I was reading just recently that the average sugar intake is like over 60 grams a day. That's a lot of sugar, but it's easy to do if you're not intentionally avoiding it.
Right. I know that we tend to want it more when we're stressed.
Yeah, definitely.
Want to turn to that Snickers bar.
Yep, absolutely.
But it has a definite impact on our health. Like I said, inflammation, but I've also read where that cancer feeds on sugar. Is that true? I mean, have you read anything like that?
Yes, I have. And so I think that is a very complex conversation. I've read things on various sides of that. There's certainly something to the correlation between sugar intake and incidence of cancer, right? Sugar is going to increase our risk for being overweight and being obese. That has a huge impact on our cancer risk in itself. High fructose corn syrup specifically has been linked to, increased intakes of that have been linked to fatty deposits on the liver. Uh-huh. Our liver is incredibly important to our overall health. It detoxifies, metabolizes our food, helps us keep blood sugar stable. And so, yes, getting too much sugar is absolutely linked to increased risk for developing cancer. And I think we're still kind of determining the specific ways that happens. And there's probably a variety of different factors involved there. I think that there are, I'm sure, forms of cancer that are going to feed on sugar. From my understanding, each cancer can be very unique, right? And so I don't know that I know enough to speak on whether every specific type of cancer is going to feed on sugar, but I definitely see that a lot. I've also seen the conversation about how sugar impacts our mitochondrial health, and that being one of the root causes of why sugar is so has such a negative impact on our cancer risk. So yeah, I think that the bottom line is that if you want to promote optimal health and longevity and avoid chronic disease, limiting sugar is just like a no-brainer thing to do.
Right. And I actually think back, I was teaching a class, believe it or not, down in Idabel, Oklahoma. And it was a cancer survivor that actually told me that was one of his treatments, was that he had to go off sugar. And he said, because it feeds cancer cells.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then, of course, what it contributes to diabetes, metabolic syndrome, those other kind of issues and stuff like that.
Blood pressure, cardiovascular, absolutely.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. I mean, it's, yeah.
For sure. So what about sugar substitutes? What is your take on those?
Yeah. So when I talk about sugar substitutes, I kind of like to split them up into categories, because a sugar substitute, it can be anything that you use in place of sugar that is low or no calorie versus what sugar would have. Right. And so in that umbrella, we've got artificial and synthetic sweeteners. So aspartame, ACE-K, sucralose. And then we've also got plant-based things like monk fruit or stevia. And then we've also got alcohol sugars that are really popular, like xylitol or erythritol.
Right.
And, I think that it's a nuanced conversation when it comes to using any of those as a sugar replacement. I personally really try to avoid the chemically produced sweeteners that I mentioned first. I think there's debate on how they affect your health inside the body, but it's pretty clear how they affect your microbiome. And that
was what I was going to bring up next, was about the microbiome.
Yes. And so that to me is a big focus. Whether or not it's getting into my bloodstream and impacting any of my organs or tissues at that point, like I said, I think jury may still be out on that, but there is lots of evidence that they have a negative impact on your gut microbiome. And then at that level, you are inevitably affecting the rest of your body. And so that's a big thing for me. Whereas stevia may help healthy bacteria grow. I mean, you see, or xylitol and erythritol, I think are the ones actually. And you see them in gums. And we have like nasal sprays that use them because they help keep that bacterial balance even in the nasal passages healthy. So yes, I like the more plant-based or alcohol sugar sweetener replacers. Any of them can still cause us to overconsume calories because we're getting that super sweet taste. And any of them can kind of recalibrate our sweetness, our attractiveness to sweetness. But in general, they're definitely a better alternative in my mind than using full sugar added,
Right. Well, I was wondering whether or not you could overdo it even on the good.
Oh yeah, like erythritol. If you've ever had too much erythritol, you will know it. Like your stomach is not happy. They make ice creams and stuff with it, and it's like that is not a situation where you want to eat the whole pint because you will pay.
So do you have any, and maybe this would be in the one-on-one coaching, but do you have any suggestions on if somebody, let's say they're going, I am addicted to sugar, like how to gradually replace that and how to maybe some strategy on how to get off sugar or lower the intake, definitely?
Well, I think the first thing to know is that you need to take it seriously because it is a genuine addiction and it is not easy, and it's not just like a personal weakness that it's difficult for you. Like it is a legitimate thing, right? And so I think it's good to acknowledge that so that you give it the attention it really requires. And so there are various pieces of that. And yes, I think seeking support, doing some type of coaching or counseling around food can be really, really helpful. We all know we shouldn't eat too much sugar or be addicted to sugar, but that doesn't mean we don't need help and accountability and an outside voice and a place to check in. So that's part of it, is knowing that it's something you need to take seriously, having some kind of support system around it as much as possible. And another thing I love to recommend is really taking a look at your environment. So what's in your pantry, what's in your fridge, what's in your freezer? get rid of it. Just don't have it available to you as much as possible on that end. And then flood yourself with better alternatives, information that keeps you on the path you want to be on. It's like when we think about learning a new language, what do they say? The best thing to do, go to that country and immerse yourself in it. Right? So one thing I realized at one point as a health, being in health and nutrition is like, it's even a challenge for me at times to stay on the wagon or whatever. And I am constantly immersed in that. I mean, my social media is all like healthy recipes, fitness.
Right.
And so as much as you can do that. Set your environment up for success. Clean out your pantry. Have a plan in place. That's huge, right? Willpower is a finite resource, and at the end of the day, we can't always rely on that. We're depleting it every day with all the hard choices we have to make. And so when you have a plan in place when it comes to your sugar limit, what you're going to reach for when you do want something that might be a better option than what you would normally go to, that just takes that mental load off. It takes out some of that need to just rely on this willpower. Define why you're doing it and remind yourself of that often. There's a lot of things you can do, but yeah, that's some of my favorite suggestions.
So another thing I've been also looking into is now that you've done some coaching, and I used to do some health coaching when I first started with the wellness program, what do you feel is the biggest struggle that people have?
Yeah, so kind of to my last point, I think that a big one is that our tanks just get on E, and it is, we have to feed ourselves multiple times per day, every day. And for many of us, it's simply not a priority, right? It may not be one of our top priorities to cook at home, to have healthy snacks ready, to take the time on the weekend or an evening to sit down and put out our meal plan for the next week or two, because it is a commitment, and it is something that requires quite a bit of our attention and energy if we're going to do it well. We have busy lives, and it's easy to just say, okay, I'm going to relegate this to an issue of convenience, right? I'm going to put that attention other places. And, sometimes life might just require that of us. But if it is something that you want to attain, if you want health to be something that you have, then it needs to be a priority, because it does require your energy. And it's a worthy priority. Absolutely. Like, you can have everything in the world, but if you don't have your health, it's cliche, but it's very true. Having the energy to get through the day, to play with your kids, to enjoy your family, to have a positive mood and have patience for people, to have the cognitive function you want to be able to have at work, or, whatever it might be, all of those things come back to our health. And it's one of those things that is easy to take for granted until we can no longer do that.
Right. And
it's a lot harder to get it back once we've lost it. Not that you can't. I mean, the body is incredibly resilient, an incredible capacity to heal. But it is so much more preferable to maintain that health than to try and salvage it after it's gone. And some of that's not within our control, obviously, but a lot of it is.
Yeah. What I found whenever I did health coaching myself was people want to do all the big changes all at once.
Yes.
And that is so, it just knocks you out, because you can't do everything that much. They wanted to lose 50 pounds in like 6 weeks, and those kind of things. And
Cut off a leg.
And they don't, you're right, they don't have the patience to pick one thing and focus on that one thing. Let's get that taken care of first. If it's just one little thing that you can change.
I love that you say that.
Yeah.
That is one of the absolute most important strategies, is to shrink the change.
Yeah.
Shrink it down.
I like that.
Yes. I didn't make that up. I can't claim that, but I love the concept. You want to make the change so achievable, it almost might seem silly to you. You know what I mean? Like, and that's brain chemistry. Like, your dopamine flows when you are moving towards a goal. And so it doesn't matter how small that goal is. Set that goal so small you know you will attain it. And then when you start moving towards it, recognize that and acknowledge that. And you know what I mean? You don't even have to like give yourself a treat, but just take a moment to say, hey, I made that. I did that.
Yeah.
And it will just pull you in, and it will definitely start to snowball things. I love to say this because whenever I first got into nutrition, my degree, like I said, it's in nutrition and exercise, and I really intended to kind of work with athletes. I had been an athlete. I was 18. I didn't know a whole lot about myself. I was like, sure, whatever. And I threw in nutrition. And so I just started making changes as I started to learn, which now nutrition is definitely my passion. But at first it was going from like having Little Debbie's and like oatmeal cream pies to like, oh, I'm going to be healthy and go get like a lean cuisine, you know? And, and it was such small things, you know, that I look back on at the time. But that's really the best way to do it, is like extremely small, sustainable changes over time have an enormous impact.
That's something to the brain. It's like, get on that roll. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come visit with me.
Yeah.
And I know our listeners are going to enjoy what you've had a lot to say, and I hope that this brings people into the store and visit with you. Go to the website and look at what all they have to offer. It's amazing what they have to offer.
Yeah, so. Thank you. It was really a pleasure to be here. I always love talking about it, and I just, it's so worth it. Like, you feel so much better about yourself, not only from the physical standpoint, but you just know you're living in such a deep integrity whenever you're day-to-day
You've got some great
your
statements.
body, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is so empowering, and no one can take that from you. And so it's really worth it. And it's not easy. And there are so many barriers and so many things in our environment working against us. And so not to devalue, you know, that aspect, but it's doable for sure. And there are definitely people out there that are ready and willing to support you on the way. So
Good.
Yeah.
All right, listeners. Thank you for being with us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to For the Health of It. For more wellness tips, information, and videos, visit the Thrive webpage. For questions, contact us at thrive@omes.ok.gov.